Welcome, teacher friends. This is blended learning, finding the structure that works best for you. Today, I hope to explain what blended learning is, the different models, and finding one that works for you in your classroom. A little bit about me before we get started. I have been working with upper elementary students for over 15 years. I have a master's degree in literacy, and on top of my master's degree, I have 90 credits. Most of those are in science and technology. For many years in my school district, I was a technology integration lead teacher. What that basically means is that I was a teacher that was pretty adept with technology, and I would help other teachers integrate technology into their classroom for communication and collaboration among their students. When I'm not teaching, I live with my husband, and we have a furry child named Samson. And some things that I like to do are paint, take Samson for walks, and go out to dinner. So what is blended learning? Blended learning is the method of combining face-to-face learning with technology-based learning. So you're using the traditional method of teaching in your classroom where you're face-to-face, but you're now also incorporating technology in there. And why do we want to do this? So first of all, there is a 21st century demand. Our students are now growing up from a very young age utilizing technology. This is the way that they are learning about the world around them. So as teachers, we need to adapt to their learning methods to help them learn and grow. Using technology will allow them to have a personalized learning experience. It will give students flexible timeframes, and it will allow them to learn at their own pace. There are advantages for both the teacher and for the student. For teachers, you can now focus a little bit deeper on that learning. You could dive deeper into certain concepts and units that you may not have been able to before. Your students will be able to have more interactions with one another. It will increase their engagement, and many of these programs will be able to give you better student data. On the student side, the students are going to be more interested in what they're learning about. So when they're interested, that's going to allow them to focus longer. That's going to allow them to learn a little bit better. It's going to give them autonomy on what they want to be doing in the classroom, and they're going to be able to be better advocates for themselves. It will also give students ownership on what they are learning and how they are learning, and it is preparing them for the future. One thing that is crucial to a blended learning environment is your access to technology. If your school does not have access to any sort of computers, a Chromebook cart, or any technology, that is going to make a blended learning experience especially difficult for you. There are different blended learning models. I'm going to go through the different models and then talk about which ones, being a teacher in the classroom, I think are most appropriate for an upper elementary school student. So the first blended learning model is a face-to-face. So this would be when you have students that are either very above grade level or they're below grade level. And the teacher will assign work on some sort of platform, and the teacher will be working with the students kind of one-on-one, overseeing their progress. The work that's being assigned to these students are either going to fill in gaps for those below grade level learners, or it will be able to provide new challenges for the students that are working above grade level. And many times in a face-to-face blended learning environment, there's going to be a specific program that you use. Then you have the self-blended model. This model is where the students participate in a traditional class, but then they may leave that class at a certain time to fulfill other opportunities for themselves. So they'll have like a supplemental course that will give them a little bit more information on different topics or different interests that they have. So some of these different courses may be an advanced placement course. This could be something that's for an independent learner, or any sort of student that's going to get additional learning in a specific field. This sort of model really would be seen more in a high school, where the students will be in the classroom for a certain period of time. And then, depending on where they're going, what path they're going down, they may leave the school or go to a different classroom where they're going to learn something a little bit more specific about what they'll be doing outside of high school. Then there's an online lab school. So this type of model, really is not run by teachers. This would be an entirely online school that is run by paraprofessionals overseeing students who have access to a computer. So this could be for students that need some sort of a flexible schedule or flexible pacing. Now, the next few models are probably ones that you have either heard about in your classroom or you may have been using and you don't even realize it. So the first one would be a station rotation model. Students rotate through the different stations and they're on a schedule. So this would be similar to centers if you have them in your classroom. A lot of teachers have like a math center, and the certain students are in the M, certain students are in the A group, the T group, and the H group. So those students look at their schedule and they know how they are going to be rotating through the stations. So if you're doing something like this, if you can incorporate technology into some of those stations, then you are on your way to using a blended learning model. A flipped classroom. So this is something that you've probably heard of, and this is where the students would be introduced to the content at home, and then when they're in school, they're practicing those skills with the peers and the teachers. So the lessons are normally pre-recorded. The students will watch that at home, maybe complete a couple questions, some sort of an activity. And then when they come into school, they're doing some sort of hands-on activity or assignment to explore that content. And the purpose of this type of learning model is to make the school environment an area where you're able to address those misconceptions and you're able to take that learning a little bit deeper by providing more engaging experiences. And then the last one is one that we are probably very familiar with. This is the remote blended learning model. So the students that are completing online work, they're completing that online work at home, and then they meet with the teacher intermittently. And for many of us, because of COVID-19, this is the type of model that many of our districts decided to go to. And this is something that we may need to prepare for again. So how do we want to integrate towards a blended learning classroom? Knowing the different models that I just went over, you want to think about which one can you realistically implement in your classroom. And it may not be one entire model that you are going to be doing. You may want to be taking different bits and pieces from each model to make it work for you. As I said before, for the remote learning classroom, this is something that we may have to prepare for in the future. Now that we've been through it, we kind of have an idea in our head, if we're reflecting upon what we did, how we could make it better. And that's something that we want to think about, whether we're going into a traditional classroom model, a hybrid model, or back to remote learning in the fall. These are ideas that you can use to help make it a better experience for yourself and for your students. So one of the things that I would suggest is to start using a learning management system. So a learning management system is a system that is going to allow you to post your work, and it's also going to grade your work. And different examples of learning management systems would be Schoology, Seesaw, Canvas. Those are all different types of learning management systems. Now, technically, Google Classroom is not a learning management system because the grading aspect does not always sync with whatever you're using to grade. But if you want to use something like that, that is perfectly fine as well. Of course, if that's okay with your district. But using a program like this, one of these systems, this is going to allow your students to prepare for whatever the unknowns may be. It will also allow yourself to organize the materials. You won't have to get used to this in a stressful situation. It will be your place where you're going to house all of your materials. And if we do have to go to a remote learning experience again, it's going to be an easier transition. The students are going to know where they need to look for their work, and you're going to know how to post it and how to use it. You may also want to dabble in a flipped classroom model. Start slow. You don't want to run and rush into anything. But there are some tools that you can check out, such as Edpuzzle and Newsela. So Edpuzzle, which I will link to in your notes, Edpuzzle is a platform that will allow you to pull in different types of videos, either ones that you make yourself, ones on YouTube, or ones that you can get from the Khan Academy and in all different areas. You pull in that video, and then what you can do is throughout the video, you can embed notes, questions, comments for the students to have to interact with. The students cannot fast forward through the video. They have to watch the video in its entirety. And you can also use that for grading purposes if you want to. So this is one way that you can start to integrate into a flipped classroom model. If you have a concept or a topic that is coming up, you can either find a video or you can make your own, and then you can assign the students to do that for homework. And again, you want to start slow. If you are trying out a flipped classroom model, you want to make sure that the students have enough time to complete the assignment, especially when starting out. I would not suggest assigning students something that they have to do on their computer at home and giving them one day to complete that, especially if technology is a problem in your classroom. If technology is not, and you have your students that are one-to-one, that would be an area where you probably don't have to have those due dates as long. But if technology is a problem, I would give the students a few days to complete the assignment. So that way, you do not have to worry about them coming in without having an opportunity to look over your information. Assessments are another way that you can start integrating to a blended learning model. You don't always have to have the traditional assessments in school. As we learned in the remote learning model, we had to have our assessments at home, and that was okay. So some forms of assessments that you may want to be experiencing with your students are having them respond to different discussion posts. On many of the learning management systems, there is an area where you can start a discussion with the students. So if you start a question, maybe it's about something that happened in the classroom, or it's about one of the videos that you assigned for a flipped learning experience, having those students respond to your discussion post can be a form of you assessing how they understand what it was that you assigned them. Flipgrid is another platform that is amazing. For students that don't like to write, the students can now make a short video clip and you can assess them that way. And Flipgrid is totally safe. It's totally free. That's another platform I will link to in your notes. And the last one is Google Forms. If you want to have a more traditional assessment, such as a multiple choice or a fill in the blank, or even having some sort of a writing response, you can use Google Forms to create an assessment. And instead of taking the time for the students to complete that in school, you can have them complete that at home. Another way to integrate into a blended learning model is to survey your students. Ask your students, how are things going? This is something that they can also complete at home. You can, again, use something like a Google form, some sort of a quick check-in. And this is going to help your students to feel empowered that they are able to provide feedback to what is happening in the classroom and how they feel about that. Students are very resilient. When we had to all suddenly go to a remote blended learning model, the students didn't really have as much of a problem, most of them, with the technology as the teachers did. It was a huge change for the teachers, but the students catch on quick. And also, the students can offer some good ideas. This can help you help them in how they learn. So I hope that you realize blended learning does not have to be difficult. It does not have to be scary. But as with anything, you want to start slow and find the method that works best for you. And if that means choosing bits and pieces of the different types of blending learning models, that is okay. But you should use this time before school starts to plan ahead. It will ease your anxiety and it's going to help you feel more confident when you want to utilize technology in your classroom. Thank you so much for investing time to make your classroom an even better place. If you would like more digital tips to use in your classroom, you can check out my blog. It's www.samsonshop.com. And feel free to follow me on Instagram, also at Samson Shop.